Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 5 worst, oh God, they're so bad, Mahler recordings. Oh, there's just been tons and tons and tons of bad Mahler, both historically and recently, and I propose to give you a little of both. Now, some of these things we have talked about before, but as always, I feel that if we're going to clumpify things, it's handy to put them on one list, or at least some of them on one list. There are so many others. And by the way, when we did the worst Beethovens, a lot of you said, you forgot Maximiano Cobra. I don't forget anything. Yeah, I do forget things. You know, I forget where I put my watch. I forget things like that. But when it comes to these recordings, I'm trying to leave some space for you all to chime in with your choices as well. So sometimes I will leave out some juicy things that we've discussed before. Don't worry about it. Don't tell me what I forgot. Give your own list. I keep saying that. I am constantly amazed by the ability of really enthusiastic, intelligent people to be unable to follow simple instructions. It's really kind of a marvel when you think about it. But that's the simple instruction. Don't criticize anyone else's list. Don't criticize my list. Give us your list, because there's so much to talk about. Just so much in this insane world of classical music recordings. So the 5 worst Mahler recordings are, first, Das Lied von der Erde with Jonas Kaufmann, conducted by Jonathan Nott with the Vienna Phil of all orchestras on Sony. Oh my God. Well, it's a gimmick. It's a stupid gimmick record. The stupid gimmick is that Kaufmann sings all the songs. We don't get a tenor and an alto. What we get is a barytenor doing everything. And it's all just ridiculous. It's monochromatic. He sings okay. I mean, you know, it's just wrong-headed in every possible way. Totally lacking in the contrast that Mahler intended. Everything about it is just screams vanity, egomania, and all of those things. It was a joke. It was a farce. Nobody has had anything to say about it since it came out. Rather interesting. You know, it got its PR build-up, you know, from Sony, and you know, when the recording was made, and then it was sort of quietly shunted aside like, you know, an embarrassing relative at a family gathering. You know, just stick it in a chair and watch it drool. That was it for that performance. Next, Symphony No. 7, Otto Klemperer on Warner. You know, people keep trying. They keep trying to make excuses for this performance. I've been an apologist for this performance. Well, the excruciatingly slow tempos and terrible ensemble values, and even the not really great sonics. You know, well, Klemperer was really, really, really old, and everything he was doing was really, really, really slow. And it shows us the excruciatingly dissonant harmonic audacity of the piece. I mean, you just hear, but at the end of the day, it's just bad. It's bad in every possible way. It's a blot on Klemperer's career as a generally fine Mahler conductor. And I wish that were not so. But I think after listening to it for decades and trying my best, you finally have to, you know, the buzzards come home to roost. You finally have to just admit that it is what it is. And what it is atrocious. It's just unfortunate, the whole thing. And a lot of people learn the symphony from Klemperer. And so, you know, they have loyalty both to Klemperer, who was a genius, and to their first encounter of the work. And, you know, to the idea that Klemperer, remember, helped Mahler with the premiere of the 7th, you know, correcting parts and all that. He was there, so he really knew it. But that none of that counts for anything when, you know, you're like 80 something and practically paralyzed and, you know, moving, you know, at 1/3 the pace that you would have had you been younger. And you know, it's just the way it was. And, you know, we have to just stop with the bullshit and admit it's bad. It's really bad. Next, well, I have a couple of Mahler ninths. And they're wrong and awful and terrible in similar ways. First, Norrington on SWR music. Now, Norrington, of course, is famous for playing Mahler totally without vibrato and with lickety-split tempos. And the irony is that Norrington's Mahler ninth was plainly modeled on Bruno Walter's from 1938, where he claimed that vibrato did not happen in the Vienna Philharmonic until 1942. Well, until after 1942, after World War II. So, I wrote a paper. Because there was an interview with Bruno Walter. And in that interview in 1960-something, Bruno Walter said, well, he was in Vienna at the time. I'm conducting the Vienna Philharmonic, and we're having a wonderful time. And I remember when I first heard them in 1897, and I was stunned by their glorious sound, and especially the special vibrato of the strings. And they sound today in 1960-something exactly the way they sounded in 1897. He says this. And Norrington is blathering away about, well, they didn't have it. Obviously, Norrington didn't hear what they were doing, or couldn't hear what they were doing, or didn't understand what they were doing. And what he does sounds nothing like what the Vienna Philharmonic did in 1938. And Bruno Walter, by the way, hated that recording because he said it was, he was nervous. It was just before the Anschluss, and the playing was wretched, and he didn't really authorize it, and all of those things. He felt that recording was not representative and sucked, basically, but it sure had vibrato. Of course it did. And poor old Norrington is here doing this twisted, perverse thing and lying, just straight lying about what was really going on in order to justify the fact that his Mahler ninth sounded as inexpressive and incompetent as anyone who's ever conducted the piece, except this next one by, what's his name, von Steinaecke. His name was Steinaecke on Alpha. This is a recent recording of Mahler on period instruments with some ad hoc ensemble called like the Mahler Academy Orchestra, which purports to play, the idea that a piece that was composed in 1909 is going to be played on period instruments and sound radically different than it would if it were played today is simply asinine and also fraudulently wrong. I mean, it's ridiculous, especially as regards the strings. And that Mahler ninth, which came out recently, was just beyond stupid and terrible sounding and inexpressive. And as like Norrington's, it was just, it was an autopsy. It wasn't a performance. It really wasn't. It was embarrassing. It was so bad. And, they're still happening. Embarrassingly bad performances of everything are still coming out, because it seems these days that there is no, back in the old days, if you made a record with a major label, in order to get the recording done, the producer had to submit a business plan saying, we're going to make this record. It's going to cost X. We're going to sell Y copies. The profit potential is Z. And that was how you got projects approved. Today, even if it's for a major label, the artists are finding some source of funding, whatever old lady they can sucker into pawning her jewelry or giving up their money to make a record, and they make the record themselves, and then they go to a label and they say, we will pay you to produce and distribute this recording on your label. And they do that with independents, and they do it with the majors too. And so that some of the majors say, okay, why not? And out comes this atrocity that's been paid for by, I remember when I was playing in a community orchestra, and we, we're a community orchestra. We had dues. You had to pay to play, but also, there was money from ticket sales, and there was occasionally a source of income. And one of the sources of income was performing music by lousy composers. And there was this guy who wrote piles of symphonies, and he had a wealthy mother. And his mother would pay the orchestra to come and do a reading, rehearsal, and recording of her baby's symphonies. And so we used to do it. Some of these pieces were not terrible. They weren't. They were never going to, be successful, I think, but they were sincere. But the bottom line is, that's how it was done. And that's what's happening today in the industry. The composer's mommy pays to have a record made and pays to have it show up on a label, just like they hire the orchestra and all that. And so that's what they're doing. And what do you expect the results going to be? No one is coming from without to make an investment in the artist and their work. So it's unfortunate, but there you are. Anyway, so we've got von Steinecke's atrocious period instrument, Mahler 9 on alpha, paid for by someone. And then we've got the all-time worst Mahler symphony cycle, which of course was Svetlanov on Le Chant du Monde, or wherever it is now, who knows. It's horribly recorded, horribly played. What do you want, Finster? All right, want to say hello? There she is. Finster, I have to say, just had oral surgery. She has stomatitis, which a lot of cats have. Something like, 10, 20% of all cats will get it. It's an autoimmune disease, so I'm comfortable with that, having multiple sclerosis. I get it. The poor kid. But what happens is the body attacks the teeth and gums, and they have to be removed in order to really for her to survive, because her teeth are going to rot out and eventually it could kill them. So she's only 3, which is terrible for her to have it at this early age. And she just had 9 teeth taken out on Friday, just a couple of days ago. And I actually got her to take her painkillers. All this thing about how to pill your cat. I did a how to pill your cat video, by the way, with Peepo when she was sick before she passed away. So I had some experience with this. Happily, Finster is so food motivated that all I have to do is stick the pill in with her food or stuff it in the little treat thing, and she just sucks it right up. I'm so glad she's stupid that way. Peepo would have spit it out in a second, but no, and so would Mildred, by the way. Mildred is not food motivated at all. So Finster is recovering nicely, and beyond that, I know I'm digressing crazily and chatting about this. It was just so interesting. When you have 2 cats and one of them goes to the vet and she's gone for a whole day because she had surgery, when she came back, they weren't getting along because Mildred did not recognize Finster, because they recognize each other by scent. And she'd just been in a strange environment with lots of other pet smells and, antiseptic and, operating room things. And so for 2 days, Mildred was hissing and snarling and getting hysterical every time Finster came into the room. But now they're getting along fine, as if nothing had happened. It takes about 2 days for the scent to wear off. And it shows just how not visually activated they are. Finster must have seemed to Mildred like a pod person or something. She looks like Finster, but she's not Finster. She's an imposter. It was really, really interesting watching them reacclimate. I just think animals are fascinating and so much more interesting than bad Mahler performances. I'm sorry, but okay. So Svetlanov's Mahler cycle is just atrocious. The only interesting part of it is the Rondo Burlesca in the Ninth Symphony, where he really makes it sound like Shostakovich's 10th. It's kind of fun to listen to. He gets through it in like 9 minutes or something, 11 minutes. It's the fastest thing ever. But the other performances, they're just awful. In every possible way. They're badly played. They sound lousy. They're perverse interpretively. They're just a mess, an absolute mess. And that cycle, I feel, which I have right over here. Right here. There it is in my Svetlanov edition, which is where it was at one point, isn't it? Yes, Gustav Mahler. There it is, 14 fun-filled CDs. I keep it because it's a party record. And it's a party record in a good sense. It's horrible, but horrible and fun and interestingly horrible. But it's got to be in the list of worst Mahler recordings because it's so consistently bad over so many symphonies. So there you have it, the 5 worst Mahler recordings. And I am very interested to have your list too. And no, I did not forget the ones that you remembered. Put it on your list and let's let it rip. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.